Hello everyone, Miguel here. Before this episode begins, I just wanted to do a quick disclaimer. You're going to be hearing a series of screams and yells and laughs in the background. Those sounds are coming from my 12-year-old son, Mauricio. He has autism, and the noises that he is making are they're the kind of noises that some autistic kids make. I haven't soundproofed the room as well as I would have liked, but you're going to be hearing that in the background throughout this episode. So just wanted to let you guys know, whoever watches this, I wanted to let you know that everything is okay. It's perfectly normal, and it doesn't happen very frequently. But my son is playing, and the room's not soundproof. So that's it. I hope you enjoy the episode.
My name is Miguel Mata, first generation American, retired military veteran, and now full-time college student. In my lifetime, I've come to meet people from all walks of life, from every corner of the country and most parts of the world, and what I can tell you is, everyone has a story. On my channel, I plan to share those stories with all of you and prove that despite the differences that make each of us who we are as individuals, fundamentally, we are all the same. And I believe that through the common thread of overcoming challenges, caring for our loved ones, and helping our communities, the rest of us will realize that our world is actually much brighter than some would make us think. And now, to shed more light. This way, out.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of This Way Out. And who do we have here but a gentleman who's been on the show before, Mr. Lanear Brown.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
As promised, we were going to explore more about Lanear's life. There's an element to Lanear's life that he feels compelled to share, maybe to help others, and maybe a little bit of, I guess maybe it might be a little therapeutic for yourself. But there was definitely an element that we weren't able to get into in the first episode, and we're gonna explore that a little bit more. And it's just, you know, Lanear's gonna share some pretty difficult moments that took place in his life, and then hopefully you can also share how you're dealing with that stuff, if you've overcome any of those things, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate you being on the show again, especially to discuss these heavy subjects. I'm drinking coffee because it's 3 a.m. No, it's not 3 a.m. It's not 3 a.m. You guys don't know what time it is. But what I can say is that we've made a few attempts at recording this episode, and hopefully this will be the final attempt.
Hopefully. So we got to get this done before the summer's out.
Yeah.
Once school starts back, you know.
Yeah, then
schedules get crazy.
Yes, yeah, most definitely. All right, Lanear. Well, I guess let's start from you know, where you grew up. Where are you from originally?
So originally, I'm from Chicago, born and raised. When I was little, we moved around a lot, but it was due to our circumstances. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I was born in the city. I remember living in the city for a while, and then we moved out to the suburbs. And so but we moved around a couple times. So basically, I grew up without my father. So my mom had me, we were living together. She did get married to my dad, and my younger sister came along because of that. And then my dad was abusive, so we ended up leaving. Went through divorce, the courts and everything, custody battle and all that. So that's part of the whole living in the city and then living in the suburbs. So we moved around because we were living alone. Then my mom moved in with my dad. Then we moved out. Then we moved here. And it was just, my mom had to find jobs, so she had to be close to work, be a good place. So she moved us to the south suburbs. And so we finally settled in when I hit 4th grade. We settled in where we stayed for the long haul, which was like it was 25 miles from like my grandma's house. My grandma still lived in the city on the south suburbs. The thing is, growing up without my father, which meant I spent a lot of time with my grandmother as well. And so one of the things about growing up without a parent is your one parent that you do have has to take over responsibility for all the others. So like I didn't have a good permanent fixture male role model in my life.
Right.
So, and as a kid, the one thing I did have a lot of access to was books, and I actually had access to TV and comic books and cartoons.
Right.
So I think one of the issues is when you're growing up without someone who's there as a permanent fixture, you kind of start looking for qualities of what you're supposed to be doing as a man.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so like when I was growing up, I read a lot of comic books, I read a lot of books, I watched a lot of TV, and you would see certain images portrayed. And then I think there's this point where you start looking at yourself and seeing if you can fit into those roles.
Interesting.
And that was one thing about media back then. People with my skin complexion weren't always portrayed in the quality role.
In a positive light, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes it difficult to try and find yourself in that.
Right.
And so, like, now I remember, like, it's, childhood memories, it's hard to recall certain things at times, but there's certain things that stick with you. I have, like, one incident with my dad that I, like, there's a couple incidences in my dad, but one in particular, I actually do remember part of the court battle for custody and everything. And then, and it's not to say that my mom didn't date guys who were good, who were good role models, but they were never around for the long term.
I understand. Yeah.
So, I mean, like one of my mom's boyfriends, he taught me how to box to defend myself, because another thing was I didn't really ever feel like I fit in, because one, we moved quite a bit, but then a lot of the kids that had two parents, and I only had one.
Right.
And when we moved to the suburbs, we moved to the south suburbs of Chicago, where we moved, is predominantly white, but it's not like minority families are a small portion. It's like, I always felt like when I was going to school, it may have been 50% white, but then like the other 50% was every other minority under the sun.
Right.
So like I think also when you're a kid, you don't think about the fact that just because they don't look like you doesn't mean, they're not like you.
Right.
Because that's a childhood thing. We're supposed to be community. We're pack animals, we gotta have, we have to communicate with others, and we have to. So that
was the environment you grew up in, so you didn't know any different.
Right.
You didn't know any different. And and classifying yourself by appearance wasn't really
thought
that crossed your mind.
Right, because it's not conducive to the way we were living. It's not. But I did get bullied a lot because I read books. I mean, like, I played sports. I wasn't good at sports, but I read a lot of books. I read comic books. I watched cartoons till now.
So
I was different.
A chance. So is it possible you picked up like that nerd reputation, like you got? I had
the nerd. I was called nerd, dork, geek.
Right.
Everything.
But that was the target.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
And it was literally, and coming off of going to school in the 80s and early 90s, it was that huge stereotypical nerd jock culture.
Right.
Like
Revenge of the Nerds.
all those movies
Yeah.
were based off of real life. That
Right,
was a
right,
culture at one point.
Right.
When we finally did settle in, you know, I lived like 2 blocks from my elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like all the kids in my neighborhood, we all played and did stuff. But then, you know, it was always hard not having a figure.
Right.
I did have an older brother, which, like, I can only recall a couple times because I didn't see him that often.
Right.
And when I was 12, I found out he committed suicide. And so, you know, and I think at the time, I didn't really understand what that was, but I knew I wasn't going to ever see him again. You know, mm-hmm. I knew that, but I didn't really understand, or maybe at some point, maybe I did understand and I didn't want to think about it, mm-hmm. because literally it happened when I was 12, and I kind of put it in the back of my mind and didn't really think about it until I turned 19, right. which was the same age he was when he committed suicide.
Oh, okay.
So like, it was rough growing up because trying to be the man of the house, always wanting to take care of my responsibilities, mm-hmm. and be responsible, but also wanting to be a kid. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a little sister who's a younger sister, she is smaller than me, but I'm a pretty big guy. But I have a younger sister who's 4.5 years younger than me.
Right, okay.
So like, you have to think about the dynamics. Like, mm-hmm. after a certain point, I would come home from school and take care of her, mm-hmm. you know, and like, my mom was always struggling because she was a single mom. She worked in the city, mm-hmm. you know, she had to drive, she had the long commute every day. So she had to leave early, so I had to make sure I was up on time. And you know, it was just
probably having to work your butt off to stay in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Then that's a huge thing.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you a quick question? I don't know if this is necessarily a step back or a step sideways or whatever, but in previous recordings of this episode, you know, like, I can relate and I understand what you're talking about when it comes to time in the 80s, time in the 90s, just that, like, television was huge.
Yeah.
Back then. It's not cable, you know, what you see on TV or the shows that you watch on TV now, like, it's not like it was back then.
No,
they had TV shows and cartoons and stuff like that for kids.
And the thing is, like, people, I don't know, it bugs me when people complain so much, because programming now is extremely more diverse than it was in the 80s, right. and the early 90s.
Right.
And, you know, people complain about it now. And I think back, like, one of the aspirations, and I think this is like one of the aspirations of the American dream, was like the Leave It to Beaver lifestyle.
Right.
You know, the 2 parents working hard, kids not really having to worry about a whole lot of trouble. Yeah. You know, that was kind of the American dream at one point. But
what I wanted to ask you about is previous recordings, you know, and you even mentioned it earlier, was that people of color, especially black people, were not painted in a positive light. Right. And so, like, I mean, like, when I was growing up, the big movies were like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, you know, Dead Presidents, mm-hmm. all of those movies. And, like, black people are not portrayed as the best. And, you know, it's just there was always that getting out of the hood lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so I think at some point you start to think about that, because, like, while I did not live in the city, I did go into the city. They sold drugs on the corner across from my grandma's house. They were shootings. I mean, bullets had ricocheted into mm-hmm. my grandma's apartment while I was there, mm-hmm. when I was growing up. So, you know, I knew that there was a lifestyle that I didn't want to be a part of, mm-hmm. and it was one of the ones that was, you know, that was constantly portrayed on TV. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just,
it was really hard growing up, because even where I was living, there were still gangs running around,
Right.
and they wanted you to fall into one side and fall into that stereotype.
And that's kind of what I was wanting you to talk about, is that around that time when those movies were becoming popular and that culture was becoming more popular, that pop culture was becoming more popular. That's what pop stands for.
Yeah.
It added an element of pressure to you. Like, there was an expectation.
Right. And it's like I think it adds the pressure of what are you going to do with your life and what type of person are you going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was, God, was I probably 15? So like at one point, like when I was growing up as a teenager, you know, and I think all teenagers kind of go through those moments where they're like, you know, I don't know, this is everything's so hard and everything's so difficult. Mm-hmm. I actually had the whole contemplation of suicide because I thought that if I wasn't there, it would make life infinitely easier for my mom because she wouldn't have to worry about both of us.
Right.
And now, I will say in my older years, that was probably the dumbest thing I could have ever thought, because when you think about things like that, you don't think beyond the hurt that it causes to everyone else.
Right.
And having experienced that myself with my older brother, it should not have been something I thought about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I had to have a friend step in and help me see it. And like literally, I got help. I talked to a social worker like the last 3 years I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And it helped me get through high school. Mm-hmm. I will never forget that man, because he allowed me to express myself and allowed me to see parts of myself that I, at the time, didn't even know were there.
Okay.
So,
That's
you know,
cool.
but
Good for
like,
him.
and
Good for
we
you.
would talk, we would talk about the bullies and everything. And, you know, and it gets to a point. I don't think I was bullied anymore after my junior year of high school, because I just got to a point where I said, I'm done. I'm tired. And you start pushing back. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing bullies get out of is that uncontrolled power. Mm-hmm. But then as soon as, you know, you step up and say, look, dude, I don't care what happens anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we can go toe to toe.
Yeah.
And if you knock me down, I'm going to get right back up. Mm-hmm. And like, once I started doing that, people were like, oh, this isn't fun anymore. Yeah. Because now I'm unpredictable, you know? Mm-hmm. Now they're like, well, I might actually have to work.
Yeah, that's about what? That's probably like 10 out of 10 times with a bully.
Yeah. And
once you stand up to your bullies, usually they back up.
And now the hardest part, now kids have a whole different thing to worry about, because cyberbullying is, there's no name, there's no face to it. So it's just, so it made really, really difficult. I did and still do look up to my uncle. My uncle was in the Army when I was little. Mm-hmm. And so when he got out, he did 12 years in the Army as a light wheel mechanic. Mm-hmm. So when I was getting ready to get out of high school, I just decided to join the Army. And I had talked with him about it. And, you know, he had finally come home. He was done. And we were talking about it. And I went to the recruiter, and my recruiter in the Army lied. He lied to me. And I ended up getting out of my delayed entry contract. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, but it was something
so you were
about
going to join the Army. You
yes,
were in the Army, basically.
I was basically in without saying the oath. I had taken my ASVAB. I was going to the delayed entry recruitment things that you had to do like once a month.
Have you been through MEPS yet for processing?
No. So you go to MEPS to do your physical and to take your ASVAB when you're on delayed entry. Because I was still a junior. I had just finished my junior year of high school.
Okay.
So
I did it all in one shot. So the ASVAB was different, but you hadn't been through MEPS yet.
Right, because I still had to graduate.
You had like a soft commitment.
Right. Ish. And so I had a contract.
Right.
But the thing is, your contract, I found this out, your contract is non-binding until you go through the MEPS to leave.
Right.
So they can still shred that contract.
Okay.
And so that's what ended up happening.
Right.
And like my mom didn't want me to go in the Army. One, because the recruiters came to my house while I wasn't home, and then, you know, they talked to me without her consent, which parental consent, you know, was a huge thing. But because I was making my own choice, my mom was like, okay. I think there was also the element of, you know, what the military stood for. And then I was like, I started looking at colleges and how expensive college was. And I was like, I don't know if I can afford that. Even though not even thinking about student loans, it was just the whole, okay, I instinctively knew I have to be able to afford to live on my own.
You know what I kind of find interesting about the stuff that you're talking about right now? You were very focused on your future. You were it seemed like you were almost obsessively focused. Like you,
and I think
thinking about all, you were thinking about all that stuff.
And I think the reason is because like I said one thing is like, I don't ever want to end up like my father.
Right.
I don't ever want to be like him. And by saying that, I knew that I had to do better at my life than what he did, what I saw him do.
At that time, especially.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because
so
I was like,
you said he was an abusive person, and
like verbally, physical,
right,
all of that.
So
he drank a lot. You know, it was.
Your future was important to you because you felt that if you had a stable future, you wouldn't be an abusive person?
Yeah. Well, I think it was more like I wanted to be better.
Right.
So this is the thing, like, you know, everybody, I know, like my mom used to constantly ask me what I wanted to do, and I tell her ideas of what I wanted to do, and she'd tell me go ahead and do it. Because she's like, you can do whatever you want. You just have to be ready to do it. You know, she never, like, I don't remember my mom ever laughing at me when I said, oh, I want to do this or I want to be that. She told me, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can be that.
Yeah, she was encouraging, supportive.
And, you know, my grandma raised me, and also, so like, she was always telling me, she liked it a lot more when I was reading books than playing video games or watching. But like when it came to watching TV, I liked watching TV with her. So I would, you know, when I spent time with her, we'd watch Oprah, and then we watch The Price is Right, and then we watch her soaps. Yeah. And then afternoon cartoons would come on.
You want to hear a neat little story?
Yeah.
Have you heard the story about why Bernie Mac became a comedian?
You know what? I've heard it before, but you're going to have to tell me again because I don't remember.
The reason Bernie Mac, a story that I heard, I want to say it was an interview that he was giving, so it came from you know, it's a good source. The man, you know, from the horse's mouth. He, you know, his grandmother raised him. And she, you know, she was working very hard, and, you know, life was hard for them, and she was, you know, much like in your situation, taking on the brunt of the work and the responsibility, etc. You know, so Bernie Mac had gotten up late at night, and she was crying in the living room, right? And he said he didn't know why she was crying, but she was crying, and she was watching The Tonight Show, I think with Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show. And Bill Cosby did stand up. He was the featured comedian. And he told jokes, right? He did his bit, and she started laughing. She went from crying to laughing. So Bernie Mac decided that if Bill Cosby's jokes could make his grandma happy when she was sad, then that's what he wanted to do. So he became a comedian. So yeah, spending time with your grandparents watching television, you know, that makes a difference. You know, that can make a difference. It leaves an impression, that sort of stuff. And maybe, you know, I don't know if that's necessarily where you were headed, but it's kind of the same. You know, it's those types of relationships, those type of bonds. You know, they're very meaningful.
At the time, I knew I wanted to work. Like my whole thing was, I really love computers. Like, you know, computers were expensive, but like I got my first computer when I was like 12, and it was an old Apple IIgs boot drive, floppy disk, you know.
3.5 floppy?
Yeah. But like my mom had a computer because my mom's an accountant. So she would do work from home. She needed a computer because she had stuff to do. So like she would teach me like how to use a computer, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's that whole, well, you start teaching your parents how to do stuff on the computer. And I was doing that really early on. And so, you know, and like my mom, we used to play video games together.
Okay.
Like me and my mom playing Street Fighter, you know.
Cool.
Like,
Oh man, what?
yeah. When I got the PlayStation, Battle Arena Toshinden came with the PlayStation, and me and my mom used to play against each other, and we'd take turns passing the controller around.
Right on.
But, you know, it's those are little things in my childhood that I remember that were just so much fun.
Your mom sounds cool, dude.
She is.
Is she still around?
Oh yeah, my mom's now a CEO of a credit union, so she's doing pretty good. She just got married again last year.
Yeah.
So.
What's your mom's name?
Karen.
Karen, you did a heck of a job. I don't know if you're gonna watch this episode, but if you do, you did a heck of a job. Congratulations. This is a good guy, and congratulations to you and all your success, overcoming your adversity.
And so, like, I think, you know, surviving high school, because I worked my way through most of high school. I got a job when I was 15, and my first real job, because I had a paper route before that. You know, I had a job when I was 15 and everything, because like one of the things I thought about was like, and one of the things was my mom was like, you're old enough to work, get a job, and you can buy your stuff. Because, you know, I had to like one thing I got bullied about was clothing. You know, it's just, I wore whatever my mom bought. And if it wasn't in style, kids are ruthless. Fashions and trends.
Well, if they're laughing, you don't need them because they're not good friends.
Well, yeah. Well.
Parents just don't understand.
Right?
Sorry.
No, I was picturing the video in my head when you said that.
I can't help it. When I get uncomfortable or if I'm nervous, I make jokes.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't we all? I mean, like, the king of pop culture references right here, man.
Yeah.
I can make them for almost any situation, any movie, like TV show. I can do
But
that.
a lot of that comes from nervous energy. Practice with nervous energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, deal with nervous energy.
So going into the military, when my great uncle retired from the Air Force, and he was a medic during Vietnam and everything, and you know, I talked with him. He was telling me I should go in the Air Force. Then one of my friends back from high school, when we were getting ready to graduate, he worked with me at my job, and he's like, bro, I'm going to the Air Force, man. He's like, why don't you come on in? He's like, come talk to my recruiter, man. He's really cool, blah, blah, blah. He's like, if you thought about the military before, maybe the Air Force is the way to go.
Okay.
So we went and talked to his recruiter, and I was like, okay. And you know, I was like, you know what, this might be the way. And like, of course, he got me on, he was an F-15 mechanic. So he was an F-15 crew chief. So he's like, oh yeah, man, nothing better than working on fighter jets and watching takeoff and blah, blah, blah. And,
Hot, baby.
Yeah, it was like, oh man, he was all over the place.
Foreheads.
So, like, I decided to go to the Air Force, and my mom was much happier with my decision to go to the Air Force than with the Army. Because, you know, my mom grew up hearing stories from my great uncle also, and everything. And then I think my uncle was happier with my decision to go to the Air Force than the Army, because he's like, that's the smarter branch. That's the smarter place to go.
Yeah.
And so...
Or so we thought.
Yeah, so we thought. It was weird, because when I left, I hadn't been speaking to my father really that much at all. I'm pretty sure my sister told my dad, because I hadn't been talking to my dad a whole lot. So, you know, it was very... After the whole... We had to go to court, and I went to court, and I told them that my dad wasn't treating me fair when it came down to me and my sister, because like he did so much stuff for my sister, and like I was a side note. So we had to go through a court custody battle where I basically petitioned to have my dad's rights taken away for visitation, and the court granted it. because like you have to go through psychological evaluation and everything, and like so I was 8. If this tells you when it happened, I was like 8, and in court my dad disowned me. So we didn't talk very much. So like
He said the words, "I disown you."
Well, from what I don't remember the whole thing, but my mom said basically he said, "Well, he's no son of mine."
Okay.
To the judge.
Okay.
Like, you know, it was basically like, you know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's just, it's hard. It's like, it's a hard distinguishing thing because, you know, he was there and then he wasn't, and then he was there and then he wasn't. Yeah. And so, like I talked to him and I think it was right before I left, I talked to him and he said he thought I made the right decision. You know, my mom was much happier with the decision, and my uncles were too. So, so like we went in, me and my buddy, the one that I was telling you about, we decided to go in on the buddy program, delayed enlistment buddy program and everything. And I actually ended up leaving a month early, which in hindsight, this is when my mom will say, the Lord has plans for you and he works in very mysterious ways, because I left a month early because I was supposed to originally go in at the end of September, which would have put me in October. And I retired 15 years and 26 days to the day, which means I wouldn't have been eligible for that early retirement had I not gone in that month early. That's hindsight and like looking at like,
wow,
that's pretty crazy. Because like literally it was the going away party for my buddy, and my recruiter shows up and he goes, "Hey, I got a slot. You want to leave with your buddy? You want to leave with your friend?" I was like, "Sure." And then my mom was devastated, of course, because all of a sudden you think you have a month left and you have 3 days.
She wasn't ready.
Welcome to deployed life. That's like, that was like, I didn't realize like that was going to be the rest of my career. So, you know, I ended up going in, and when you get into basic training, I think what basic training is, well, what it was when we went through, because I know it's changed a lot, but it was that point where you had to start reflecting on yourself and who you were and who you wanted to be really hard. Because basic training, while there was a physical aspect, it was all mental.
There were a lot of mental challenges being thrown at you, and when I look back on it, it's like, I was such a wuss, you know, or something like that. You know what I mean? I can't believe I freaked out about
so
stuff.
It's one of those things, though, when you're going through it, it looks like it's because they purposely threw all that stuff at us, because it was they were trying to weed out people who they didn't think were going to fit into the lifestyle. And I mean, that was the best place to do it before they spent a ton of money on you, training you to do something.
That's true.
Because, you know, that's the cost incurred to train one person is huge. But like, you know, you were, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but you were reflecting. That's where you did some reflection in there or something? I don't think it was where I was reflecting. I think it's just where certain things that I didn't realize I had, like, you know, some of the learning how to be a leader started in basic training. It started to be where I started to make decisions, I guess, from a leadership position, from a leadership mindset, maybe. But at the time, I didn't realize that that's what it was. You know, I'm trying to do what's right. It's just you start being cognizant that you're making decisions like that. So, you know, get to your first base and you're learning stuff, and you have to learn because you have to know what you're doing. But then, like, I got into this whole. It was like right after I got there, I was 19. I was hanging out with a bunch of guys who I'm still friends with. Like, this is one of the core groups of friends I made over my military career. And so, like, we're in Edwards, so you're not too far from LA. We would go to clubs, 18 and up, but we'd go there to listen to the music. You know, it wasn't so much like going out to pick up girls or anything. No, we were actually going to listen to music, to listen to DJs. And so one of my friends was like, I was like, I always wanted to be a DJ. So we went down to the store and he was like, I'm buying these turntables. I was like, okay. So he bought turntables and records. And he asked me, he was like, you got a bigger room. Can I keep them in your room? And I'm like, sure. I don't really care. I have this huge room to myself. Why not? And so, I mean, like, it wasn't like we didn't already hang out all the time in my room anyway. Yeah. So I bought a couple records and everything. And then, like, after that, I had this huge, like, moment where I got kind of depressed because I started to remember something that happened with my older brother. So my older brother is this memory I have of us, and I was really little. I have no idea how old I was, but I was with my older brother at his place, and we were listening to like some Run DMC on vinyl on his turntables, and he was scratching records and all that stuff, and like he put on some Michael Jackson, was teaching me how to moonwalk, how to properly moonwalk, you know. Right. It's one of those things. It's like one of those moments I have with my older brother. It's like one of the only memories I still have of him. And it was that moment, like the music connection, the turntables, everything, it connected me to him. And it still does. I still have those turntables 17 years later. And I mean, right now they're in my attic because other things take priority. Right. But it was an activity that I could do that was something that connected me, you know, and like it was working through that because I was 19, which was the age my brother when he killed himself. He was that age, and he left a family behind. And I was 19, looking at and realizing at 19, like, wow, there's still so much left to do. And it's like that whole why would you make that decision? And so I went through this whole thing, and it really, I view things through a certain lens.
Okay, yeah, and that would make sense.
And so, I mean, my friends helped me get through that because, you know, that's what we do. We latch onto each other, and I think the military has a really big thing about when you make friends, they do become your family. What the military gave me, though, was it gave me that personal role model because, you know, I found them with the people I worked with. It gave me that personal role model that I never had growing up. The person that I like, oh, I want to be like you, what I need to learn from you, you know, and that's what the military gave me. So I had to learn how to adjust to that. Yeah. You know? But like,
well, what do you mean? Like, what kind of adjustment did you have to make?
I mean, like, for them to actually be there. Because when somebody's not there, you don't ever, like, you're never, like, the whole, I got my butt chewed by some of my supervisors because there's nothing worse in the world when someone you respect and you care about tells you, I'm disappointed in you. Yeah. Because of a decision you made. Yeah. Or because you're not up to snuff. That is like the worst feeling in the world. Right. And I finally, like, besides my mom, I finally had someone who was a man, you know, that was telling me that.
Yeah, you had good male role models.
Right.
You had male role models, yeah.
And I mean, like, now I'm not saying my stepdad, when he was living with us, wasn't. I'm not saying that by any, but like actually having it and it's affecting not only my personal life, but my actual work, my career. Yeah. That's a whole different story. Right. And so, I think like, and so I think that was interesting because it didn't go away. Throughout my entire military career, that didn't go away. I always had people that I looked up to or people who I respected that I wanted to be more like them. You know, and looking back now, I didn't have the full story on all of them, but I saw the qualities that I wanted to have in myself. So it was always the whole, how can I be better tomorrow than I was today? Or how can I be better today than I was yesterday? Yeah. And I mean, like the car accident, like, so people tell me that I'm extremely optimistic. I haven't always been that way. But like we talked about in the last video about my car accident, that whole, well, I'm alive I feel like I shouldn't be. So what can I do to make the most out of this?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I do go to some dark places when I'm feeling down.
Right.
And I just, like, I have to stop and think about them. Like, look, I'm still here. There's been many times. There's been many times that I should not have been here.
Right.
I mean...
But you were also looking through that lens that you said that you learned 19 when you were... I'm still here. There's still more I can do. Yeah.
You know, there's still a lot of time left. So it's the whole, to me, the self-reflection and self-judgment and everything.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's something that everyone goes through. And like for me, it's been huge stages in my life, like the death of my brother, getting into the military, my car accident, and then right before I got out, my father committed suicide too. So like, I had always said I didn't want to be like him. Now I had the ultimate reason not to be like him, you know? Right. And it sounds really messed up, but it's not meant the way that it comes off.
Right.
It just like I had tried so many times to reconcile with him. And I found out that I had a lot more in common with my dad than I thought, because like my stubborn streak probably comes from him. Because like I tried to reconcile with him, but everything had to be on his terms.
Right.
And so like he was so stubborn, and just like if it wasn't on his time, there was no time.
That was the wrong time.
Right. And so like, and I had to start really looking at things like that, you know, I always said that, one, when I have a family, I don't want my kids to grow up with a single parent. And that's just because I know what the strain I've seen as a child. I saw the strain that it has on kids and parents from that perspective. And I don't ever want to not do my part to raise my kids, but I also don't want to have to walk in those shoes of what my mom did, because I saw how tough it was. Yeah. And, you know, I've always said that. So that's always been something I've been working towards. Still not married, still don't have any kids, you know, but, you know, I ain't dead yet. So, but I mean, like, and then figuring out, trying to be like financially stable. Right. Like, you know, I'm working on not just finishing a bachelor's, I'm trying to make plans to be able to afford and pay for going to get a PhD, a doctorate. That's no easy task.
All
and I'm trying
military career. I'm gonna tell you, you're when you finally get this done, dude, you're gonna be a pretty cool badass. And
I still say the worst thing is I'm gonna get all of this done, and then I am not gonna be a teacher like I want to, because something else is gonna pop into my lap and be like, well, should I really pass this up? But like
you might get lucky and fall into a
I said it was gonna be like something like, oh, I'm gonna have like some kind of politics thing, and I'm like, oh great, no, this is not where I want to be.
You never know. You might get lucky and fall into a vat of toxic sludge and become like a superhero or something. Oh, sorry.
That didn't work for the Toxic Avenger though.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Trauma films. But
it's like one of my favorite. Have you ever seen that movie High School High?
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite lines. Oh, another Kurt Russell reference. He's like, maybe we can drop him in a vat of toxic sludge still, or have him bit by a radioactive spider or something like that. When the kid's not showing any signs of being a hero.
Yeah. God, I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Lanear, you shared a lot, and you have obviously been through a lot. And I know that you still deal with, you know, you have the things that you are managing. But I want you to know that I'm impressed. You know, like I'm impressed and I'm proud to know you. I'm proud of you. for whatever that counts for, I guess.
Oh, it counts a lot.
But I think you are doing a great job, and I think that you have. My son is. I don't know if this is picking up on the microphones. Probably. I'm gonna put a little disclaimer in the beginning of the video, probably about noise. But anyway, I think you have a bright and successful future coming, and your perspective, your motivation, your drive, it all comes from a place. Well, you know what? I think that's a very good point to make, to be honest, because it's kind of one of the underlying elements behind this project is that your perspective, your motivation, and your drive all come from places that are difficult and all come from places of adversity that you've had to overcome and experience firsthand and overcome. But here you are, it's not easy. It's not easy. There's nobody here is saying that it's easy, and you've definitely shared that it's not easy, but you're doing it. So I hope you don't mind. Not I hope you don't mind. So as you know, when we get to this portion, unless there was something else that you wanted to share.
No.
Okay. No. When we get to this portion of the interview, as you know, I offer you the opportunity to share some advice. And I don't remember what you shared last time.
I don't either.
I didn't review the last video. Shame on me.
I don't remember.
But whether you say the same thing or not, I want to give you an opportunity to share some advice again.
I think the best thing to say is that success is not as easily defined as we'd like it to be, because sometimes you don't realize success is actually you've been successful until well past. Because some days the battle is just getting out of bed in the morning, and if you've gotten out of bed and gone about your day and done everything, that's a successful day. Mm-hmm. I mean, it all depends. So I guess that's what I think is a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I'd say that is a good piece of advice. I think you make a very good point, because it's very easy, or it's very common to try to define it. And what is it you just said? It's not easily defined.
Yeah, it's not easily defined, right? Because sometimes it's situational.
Right, that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's very good advice. Right, that's very good advice.
Life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Right. Boom.
Oh man, the movie references. I love it. So, Lanear Brown, everybody, here for part 2 of his visit with This Way Out, me and the This Way Out project. Thank you very much for sharing a little more about your life and about your story. Props on the courage, that it takes to share what you did. So I'm confident it's going to help somebody. Somebody will be able to get something out of it. But this has been This Way Out. My guest has been Lanear Brown. This Way Out, the website. I'll plug the website first. thiswoe-light.com is the website. Blogs and feature articles and these interviews are posted there. The interviews are posted to YouTube at This Way Out. And then there is also Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Facebook and Instagram at thiswoe.light. Twitter, thiswoe_light. I'm going to be changing that soon so it all flows a little bit better. But that's a later time. But you can find it. You can find This Way Out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and on the website. If you enjoyed this video and you want to watch other videos, be sure to comment, like, and don't forget to share. And the comment, especially comment, I'd really like some feedback as to how these are going. I'm trying to make them a little bit more engaging if possible. But some creative feedback would be greatly appreciated.
If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little bell so you get notifications.
Click the bell.
I got your back.
Thanks, buddy. It's a good wingman.
I watch too much YouTube.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. You folks have a good day. God bless.